All right, last element I've probably got time to share with you, and it's an important one, and it's the element of surprise. Okay? Now, it's probably no surprise to you that surprise is an important component of a well-told story, right? All of the books that you love to read and the movies you love to watch, they all have a surprise ending, and it's very entertaining, right? And that's true. And it will do that for your stories as well. If it's a nice surprise ending, will make for an entertaining story. But there are more practical reasons to put surprise into even the kind of leadership stories that you tell. And it depends on where you put the surprise, okay? Surprises you put at the beginning of your story get your audience to sit up and pay attention and listen to your story, instead of thinking about the last email that they read and the next one they've got to write and the next meeting they got to go to, right? And we're all busy people. If you can surprise them a little bit at the beginning of your story, they'll pay attention to your story better. But that's not the most important part. The most important place to put a surprise is at the end. And the reason is, again, it's not just for entertainment value. The reason is because it will actually help your audience remember the lesson in your story better. Right? And here's why. Some of that cognitive science research that I mentioned earlier has concluded that human beings don't form memories like a digital camera immediately as soon as they happen. It's more like the old-fashioned film camera that we grew up with, right? It takes between a few seconds to a few minutes, sometimes to a few hours, for the memory of something to actually solidify in memory. And psychologists call that the memory consolidation period, right? Now, and you know that this thing goes on, by the way, because you've seen it when it gets interrupted, right? How many people in this room have ever gotten a concussion from getting your head hit? Nobody? Surely 10% of you must have. Yeah, a few of you? Okay. So what you'll remember, or won't remember as the case may be, is that you probably lost memory of what happened right before the accident, right before you got your bell rung. Right? And that happens to just about everybody. You don't forget your name or your phone number or where you live or anything that's like long-term memory. You forget the stuff that just happened. In fact, a lot of people that are in accidents that get head injury don't even remember the accident. The reason is because the accident was still in the memory consolidation period when they got their head hit. Right? It wasn't finished processing. Right? Now, if something can interrupt the memory consolidation process, the good news is something can enhance it. And that thing, there's two of them. One of them is in your morning coffee, right? Caffeine. Caffeine actually improves the memory consolidation process, makes it faster and more effective. The other thing is adrenaline. A little bit of adrenaline will make you remember what just happened a few seconds ago more. The kind of adrenaline that gets released in your system when you get scared or surprised. A surprise ending literally releases a little bit of adrenaline that will get your audience to remember what you just said before the surprise, which is the lesson of the story. Okay? So let me give you an example of this, because I want you to see how surprises take place in a story and the difference they make from the beginning to the middle to the end. So my first day of my junior year of high school, 11th grade year, first day, 1984, fourth period bell, Mr. Jim Owens, world history class. Remember it like it was yesterday. I walk in, I sit down. The class starts like the way the first day of any class starts in the school year, by the teacher telling us, here's how the class is going to work, here's what we're going to study, here's the textbook, here's how the grades work, 2 midterms, 1 final, 2 term papers, all that kind of administrative stuff you got to do. 5 minutes into that, the back door to the room slammed open. 3 guys came running into the room, all wearing ski masks, carrying guns, ran to the front of the room, knocked the teacher down, pointed the gun at him, stole his wallet, and took to this day what I believe was the grade book off of his desk and left. All in about 15 seconds. That was my first day of the 11th grade, 30 years ago. Okay? Now, after, we're just petrified in fear, not moving, right? The teacher gets up, promises that he said, I'm okay. Now relax. That was staged. Those are my seniors from last year. Your first homework assignment is to get out a piece of paper and a pencil and write down everything that just happened with as much detail as possible. So we're, of course, just still freaking out, right, from what had just happened. But, we do what he tells us to do. He gives us a few minutes to write it down. He walked around and he collected everybody's sheet of paper. And he walked up to the front of that room and he read to us every single page. 5 minutes into class, 3 guys burst into the back of the room, all carrying guns, knocked the teacher down, stole his wallet, and left. 7 minutes into class, 2 guys and 1 girl burst into the back of the room, 2 carrying guns, 1 carrying a knife, knocked the teacher down, took the grade book, and left. 10 minutes into class, 3 guys came into the back of the room carrying fake guns. I could tell they looked like water pistols, spray painted black, didn't fool anybody. You know, whatever. He read every one of those pages to us. And when he finished the last one, he said, "History will always be remembered through the eyes of the people that write it down." Right? People in power will remember things differently from those not in power. The victors in war will remember things differently from the vanquished. Right? Keep that in mind as we read this particular book on world history. Now open your books and turn to chapter 1. Now, I'd like to think I learned a lot of history that year, but I am convinced that I learned the most important lesson about learning history on that first day, and that is to take everything I hear about history with a little grain of salt and understand who is it that's telling me this history, and how might that be different than the experience of somebody else. Right? Now, obviously, 15 years after doing that, after Columbine and a number of other things that happened that were very similar to that, but real, he had to stop doing that because it was a little bit too real, but it taught me an amazing lesson. Now, let's diagnose that as a story now. I mean, the first surprise in that story was when the door bursts open and the 3 guys run into the back of the room wearing ski masks and carrying guns, right? If you were there like I was, that literally got you to sit up, physically sit up and pay attention. But when I told you that story and I got to that point, you sat up and paid attention too. There was nobody in the room checking their email at that point in the story, right? It got you to pay attention. And then you go through and you've got a few more surprising things that keep things interesting, like guns and wallets being stolen and things like that. But near the end of the story, there was a couple of surprises that you probably wouldn't have seen coming. Right? The first one was, now I'm almost at the end of the story, was that it was all staged. Right? You didn't see that coming, and neither did we. All right? But that wasn't the last surprise in the story. What was the last surprise in the story? Anybody? Yeah, that all the lessons were different, all the stories were different. Everybody's rendition of what happened was different. We didn't see that coming, and again, neither did you. So the surprises at the beginning got us to sit up and pay attention. The surprises at the end seals the lesson into memory.